For those of you who may be remote, the room is filling very, very slowly because they have a particularly good break. It's a real break feast and not fast. So we may be starting a couple of minutes late. My apologies.
For the other clip.
Which one? For what? Okay.
Mind you, there's just about enough space to go around you, so I'll have to go around you. I'm the speaker.
We're going to try to get started, even though there's very few people in the room. If you're not here for this meeting, please leave the room. If you're here for the meeting, please come sit down. Not having much success here. All right, welcome to the second meeting of NETMOD. We're going to carry over the discussion related to adoption of the design team's work. I'm actually going to put that toward not first because we have so few people in the room. So, first of all, since this is a new session, we need to do our note well. Please remember that everything you say here becomes a contribution to the IETF, and IETF contributions are governed by our policies. And please take a look at the note well if you're not familiar with it. The URL for that is at the bottom of the page. We are, as at the last session, we are doing the video session. We have people remote. We also are recording the audio and video. Please join in on Etherpad and help us collect minutes. Are you on Jabber yet? We're going to be getting on Jabber in a moment. Sorry about being there a little late. Oh, great. So Mahesh is with me on Jabber, and we have, it looks like my co-chairs are not online. Is someone commenting? Is it on the opening? Okay, please read it.
Okay, so this is a comment from Martin. Clarifying question, more like it. Is it correct that the version selection doesn't change anything?
We're not talking versioning yet. We're going to do versioning later. All right, so we're here until 4:30. 450? Okay. Well, so the last topic was going to be on org RFC, that Chris Hops was going to talk about that. We're actually going to table that. So that's scratched. So we have an extra 10 minutes free. We're going to use that 10 minutes for the versioning discussion. I'm going to try to hold that for the last 10 minutes for hopefully getting more people in the room. This does mean that, Chris, you talk to a smaller room, but please come on up. We're going to get started with geolocation. Do you want the clicker?
Yeah, just let me. Not that tall. Thank you.
Sorry.
Is Benoit in the room?
Benoit's in the room.
Where? Oh, right in front of me. Excellent. No, thank you. Well, just a motive. Well, anyway. Okay, so this is an update on the geolocation grouping. It's been sitting kind of idle, partially my fault for not pushing forward on it as quickly. So the update from the 01 version, I had an 02 version, which addressed some things that showed up on the list, which was basically, I guess there was an issue with the choice and having mandatory underneath it. So everything is now optional. Which is nice. It's nice to have everything optional because I started thinking about people might want to do cascading geolocations, so they could, specify like the alternate system or the geodetic datum at a top level, and then just specify lat long, for each object. So that would make that's why making lat long optional made sense, or the location optional. So then, so the two IETFs ago, Benoit requested that, well, we first asked if there were any experts on geolocation in the room. There were none. And so he thought it would be a good idea to go seek out some experts. And I didn't do that for a while, but finally actually sent some email to a couple of folks that Jeff Haas put me in contact with through somebody else. And they were from the NOAA, which is a National Oceanic and Atmospheric, I think, something, and somebody else in climate. And then I got turned down by somebody at the U.S. Geological Survey. But 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So they both reviewed the grouping and both thought it was good enough. Like, I mean, I basically said, listen, we're not trying for perfection here. We're just looking to make sure that we didn't make any glaring mistakes or omissions. And they both said that it looked good. I did get a decent feedback from, well, I don't have the name in here yet because I want to ask them to make sure that they're okay with me giving them credit for this. But Jim gave me some feedback on there's just some slight fixes that we needed. Like the coordinate accuracy didn't make sense. I had put like the height so we have 2 accuracies, right? We have the location accuracy, like the lat long, and then we have a separate accuracy for height. And the reason for that is that a lot of times the height accuracy might not be as good as the location accuracy. But anyway, I'd applied the height accuracy to the Z coordinate in the Cartesian location, and that didn't make any sense because it's just a 3-dimensional vector. So the X, Y, and Z are all now scoped by the main accuracy. I also had not updated the table in the W3C comparison. In the version from 00 to 01, I switched the velocity vector. Well, I switched it from a heading and speed to a velocity vector, Z, north, east, and up. And so I didn't update the table in W3C, so I fixed that. And also, another comment was, don't bother with the degrees type def. You've got units specified under some nodes, but then you're putting that inside the type def for degrees. It didn't feel strongly about it. So I just moved it all to decimal 64 definitions for the decimal and the meters per second. So it's uniform. The other review, Ben suggested adding a valid for or some timeout or expiration time, and that seemed easy enough. So that's added. So this has not been published yet. These changes I just have locally. I wanted to, it came after the deadline. So the old grouping looks like this. You can see there's not question marks on everything. The new grouping is highlighted in red, the changes. So the chord, I don't know what changed with chord and height accuracy. Oh, I think I'm just pointing out the fact that it changed the application of that. So the definition of height accuracy only applies to height. And the chord accuracy changed by applying to X, Y, and Z. Lat and long now have inline decimal 64, and the valid for node is added. It's number of seconds. Lou had mentioned offline that he wondered, should we be sub-second?
I think the actual comment was, should we just do a valid until, and then that will allow you to do whatever precision you want.
Oh, you want to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so Lou's suggestion was put a secondary timestamp in there, and the reason not to do that, right, is because you might have a lot of devices out there generating geolocation data. They could be very small devices, very simple devices that are generating this geolocation data, or have it programmed inside them, right? Like when they're installed. Like, here's your geolocation, now just report that when somebody, contacts you on your netconf port, right? The reason you don't want to do two timestamps, one timestamp you can do because you just your clock, but trying to say, if you tell the device, okay, only say that you're in the valid for, set it for 3,600 seconds from now, right? If that little stupid device has to try to calculate what that means in a timestamp, you just made that stupid device have to be a lot smarter, because time is hard, right? Delta seconds offsets are not.
Lou Berger as contributor, if it could do it for the timestamp in the first place, it should be able to do it for the...
It's not doing any time calculation, right? Oh, I see what your point is, because in the encoding, it has to report a date. Okay, so that's a reason to not report it that way. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we shouldn't put a time, maybe we shouldn't be doing a date time as the format. Maybe we should do seconds in both. Okay.
I'll put a chair hat on. It sounds like a good list discussion, and you and I should have this list, duke it out on the list.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good thing for the list. Right.
By the way, we may be the only two people that care about this in the room.
Probably.
You know what? Does anyone else have a comment? You mind going back?
Yes.
Okay. So looking for any comments, and apparently there's one on Jabber.
So Martin says all nodes are optional anyway.
Yes, no, they're optional, but in this case, what I'm arguing for is that the device may actually want to report these nodes, right? And then how hard is it to report them? Anyway, I think me and Lou can duke it out on the list, and probably either way is fine. I just thought that seconds after timestamp was pretty simple, right? You just say this is valid for 10 seconds, or this is valid for Rob.
Rob Wilson, Cisco. So just a quick question on the date and time things. If this is going to be, if there's lots of devices generating this data, are you thinking IoT type devices where this might be very constrained? Are you thinking that maybe this is going to be going to a binary encoding, in which case you probably want a date and time that can be easily constructed or is tight in that encoding? Because I agree with you that generating.
We're having trouble
Really
hearing.
hard to hear.
Yeah, we're having trouble hearing. And does someone mind closing the door in the back?
I'm not sure it's because of you, but it's the.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. Is that better or worse? Doesn't make a difference. Too much echo. So I was just saying that is the thought here that we use for IoT devices?
For almost anything, right? I mean, it would be it also people are looking to use them in like router, like where's the router installed, right?
So I guess what I was saying before is if it happens to be that there are lots of small devices generating this, I agree with you that generating a date and time string might be relatively expensive, particularly you have a binary encoding or something for this data, then you might want seconds from epoch or something, might be cheaper, much cheaper to do or something, I don't know. It's worth thinking about.
Yeah, okay. More Jabber?
On Jabber, Tim Carey says we typically allow for seconds from or a date time. It works for IoT and other devices.
Oh, so IoT is already using that. Okay.
Right. Follow up. Sorry, Martin says make a choice.
Oh, well, okay. All right. So so I need to publish these changes, and then I wanted to get feedback from. I told the reviewers that I would get feedback from the working group, and then publish the changes and send them that final version, and then I think we're ready for last call.
Yeah, Kent. I talked to Kent about this since he wasn't going to be here, and he said he's the shepherd on it. He said that he is going to wait for the outcome of the discussion, and as soon as there's a version, we say that it's stable and there's no more comments from the working group, he's going to last call it. So should be real soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Michael? Oh, right. Shin. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Qin Wu from Huawei. I would like to present this EC data model on behalf of a bunch of the authors. We have two relevant drafts, and I see Igor Brisky join remotely, and we also have several problems in the floor. So go back a little bit background. So what is ECA? So the ECA actually is a acronym of Event, Condition, Action, and this actually widely used in some other areas like active database system or event-driven architecture. So our idea is try to introduce this ECA concept to network management domain. So that's a relevant working group called SUPER. They try to deliver a SUPER policy young data model. But it didn't get succeed. One of the delivery they make actually is SUPER framework. They actually define two type of policy. One is declarative. The second is imperative. The difference is the declarative focus on the what the goal is, what the objective is, while the imperative focus on how to achieve this goal. So ECA policy young data model is one typical example imperative policy model. So with the ECA, actually, it allows the event can be triggered when certain condition, maybe one condition or a set of condition satisfied, and it will signal a set of action, maybe one action or maybe a set of action to be carried out. So one of the benefit actually you can have client generate event, push it onto the device, let the device self-control. So This will greatly reduce the response to the event. And so we try to focus on these kind of use cases. So, yeah. So this is not a new draft. Actually, updated since the last IETF meeting. Actually, we present this topic in NETMOD session, get a lot of support. But before this meeting, and we get a chair suggestion, we should, consider another input from Igor's draft. So Igor and me actually kick off the discussion on the list, and probably you follow the minutes to can get that actually. So we try to better understand each other proposal. Actually, we see a lot of commonality. Actually, the commonality actually is the basic elements of ECA model, like event, condition, action. In addition, we may have common use cases like event self-healing or self-management use cases. Another is telemetry smart filter cases. But we also see some advanced functionality that can be supported in some cases. Actually, is very useful. So we have some open issue actually that haven't been closed on the list. So in this meeting on Monday morning, we organized a side meeting, actually targeted just a small audience, just a draft author, to get it together to get agree the direction of the ECA model, the scope of the ECA model. Actually, we reached a lot of agreement. Actually, for what in the scope, actually, we think we should support, for example, policy variable concept policy. We think policy value just a subset of the policy variable, and we also need to support like a function call or RPC call. The reason for that, actually, we really want to support a more complex mathematical computation. For RPC call, actually, you can invoke the RPC that is defined in standard Young data model. That will be very beneficial to leverage this kind of RPC call. So also we really want to focus on the device self-management use cases. We think for client-generated script actually can be pushed down to the device. Ask the device can self-control self-management. It will be very useful. But if you want to have a client-generated script to be executed in the client, actually they may cause a long time delay. So this is not the optimal choice. So the thing not in scope, we think is kind of centralized the policy control cases. So we really like to have distribute the policy control cases, just let the device to have some capability to self-control with this ECA functionality. Also, we discussed for smart filter model. Actually, there's a relevant draft from Alex. Actually, we think could benefit from this ECA model, but would really like to focus on the generic ECA model. So smart filter could augment from this. Smart could benefit from this. One of the approach is maybe augment Young push with some condition expression that define in the ECA model. So another one is about the ECA model. Actually, they may invoke a multiple script. Here there's some typo. Not necessarily be the ECA script. Could be any script file that can be generated from any means, not necessarily generated from the Young data model. So that is a little bit complicated. We want to leave this out of scope at this moment. So really want to focus on the generic part of the ECA model. So what a ECA model look like? This is our model design. Actually, you can see for ECA model, actually basic three elements is event, condition, action. And So event actually can represent the state of change or operation state that associated with the management data object. It also can represent some value change of the configuration data that are associated with the management data object. For condition, actually, it can be seen as a logical test that can be satisfied and trigger some action. For the action that represent some, like I want to update some management data object, I want to invoke some management data object. So these are the three basic key elements. So based on the side meeting discussion on Monday morning, actually one of the suggestions is we really want to use a model framework, but we really want to define event, condition, and action separately. So put them together, you can form the ECA model. And but how is the condition model? How is the action model? So we think it is the core piece is the policy variable. So policy variable actually can be used to represent the condition expression, can be used to represent the action expression, and so actually there's some reference from one of the actually called policy information model of the 36840. Actually, they have a clear definition for what is a policy variable, what is a policy value. So we think a policy value actually is kind of subclass of policy variable. It's very useful, but we really want to focus on the policy variable. So this kind of thing can be used to store the global state or temporary state. When you get involved some computation intensive functionality, you want to do, for example, multiply, addition, minus, and you can leverage this global variable to store this kind of state, put into the database. So this is a very important part. So for the condition, actually, the condition can be expressed by this policy variable, also logical test. We also want to support mathematical computation. For example, multiply, divide, addition. Actually, we can leverage a function call to do that. Another, actually, as I already mentioned, is RPC call. This RPC call, actually, many IETF model, young data model define such RPC. We can leverage this kind of standard RPC call to, achieve more advanced functionality. So for the action we can support right now, actually we can support, for example, reconfigure the data object, or we can, issue the log notification to the management plane. And another case, actually, you may support a bunch of events. You need to link one event with another event, so we can actually to have such kind of workflow of the event. This help you to track the event change or track a bunch of the events that are associated with the same service or associated with the same task. For policy argument, actually, we also talk about XPath. Actually, we see XPath can be seen as a condition expression with policy variable as the input. So it's very similar to the policy variable, but more powerful than the policy variable, since we can leverage XPath function. So next is about use cases. Actually, as I mentioned, we talk a lot about use cases. Here we just show some example. Typical use case is device server management. For example, you want to do the fault localization and server healing in the device. So you can leverage this ECA model and push down this ECA model and generate the ECA script from this kind of model, and then you can take a quicker action when the event be triggered. So this will help you to do the network problem or network failure recovery very quickly. Another case is telemetry smart filter. Actually, the key part is condition, but we don't need to touch the action part because you can leverage young push data publication to do that. So here the idea is just show the condition defined in the smart filter can leverage the condition grouping defined in the ESA model. In addition, we may support more complex computation functionality. For example, you may support multiple conditions. So this condition can be combined together, use OR, XOR, or and also you can leverage some like a function call to calculate, for example, end-to-end paths based on each subpath related performance metric, for example, delay. So all of these can be represented by this ESA model easily. So this for the next step. Actually, the two jobs also already get together. We agree, work together, and this is not a new job. Actually, we presented for many times, and we think actually we will keep collaborate work on the clarity to for the document scope, and we think so. The question to the chair whether it's a good baseline for next step.
So I'd like to hear from the working group any comments they have. In particular, I'd like to hear from. I definitely would like to hear from the other authors that you met with and their perspective, whether they can agree. So Shifang, I think you're it.
Actually, Igor is on the line. I don't know if he.
And Igor is also online, so
Yeah.
It'd be good to hear from both of you.
Right. So basically, the
name,
situation. Okay. Yeah. This is Shifeng Liu from Water Networks. So we had a meeting. We had the various discussions, and so now we have the agreement on the general principles and directions. So we still have some details yet to be worked out, but yeah, that's a continuation of the work. So we kind of had a common direction now.
So you think it's on a good. It's actually really hard to hear up here because of the sound. So
Yeah.
I think you said that you think it's on the right, going the right direction.
Yes.
But there's some things that need to be worked out, and so you think once that's worked out, they'll be ready for adoption?
Even for now, probably all the major things we already worked out. So if you want to move forward now, it should be okay. So we don't have to resolve all the little details.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. How many people have read the version that was ready before the IETF? So there's a version that was submitted, yesterday, today?
Yeah.
So that's version 7, if I remember correctly. So I'm not asking about the one that was just submitted because I don't think it's fair to have anyone have looked at it. But how many have read the prior version? I think that's a reasonable number. How many have read any version? So, or an earlier version, but not the last version? It's about the same. I guess I was confusing in the question, but I think that's a reasonable number. How many think that this is a good direction for the working group to be headed in? What's been laid out of this merging together and the overall solution that's being proposed?
Rob Wilton, Cisco. So one question I had, there was also a third draft, Nicola, that was sort of, again, a finite state machine model that is, again, somewhat similar. I think there was a suggestion maybe that one could be incorporated. Was there any effort to do that? What was the conclusion of that outcome?
I have already contacted also that draft. Actually, it's called Sample from Italy University. Actually, one of the courses is Giuseppe. Actually, we actually have offline discussion But I think his draft is not ESA focused. We think maybe benefit actually move this kind of idea to the ESA framework. Because we really want to narrow down the scope, and we have offline discussion with Giuseppe's also another draft, and they agree, the current scope of the model, and they think their idea maybe look into some research aspect they want to delve into. So could be separate into another document. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you didn't mention, isn't he an author now on this draft?
Not also this draft. Another also. Actually,
I thought Nicola was listed as a co-author. No.
Nicola. It's a FSM draft, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Nicola is now listed as a contributor. So has he been part of this discussion, or is he just listed as a contributor and not participating?
We have actually offline discussion, actually email exchange, and also in this meeting, some of the author for that draft actually we have face-to-face discussion about that. Yeah.
Do you want to go to remote?
So a couple of comments on Jabber. I think Daniel, I would jump to Igor saying good progress, agree with Zufan. I don't know, Daniel King says something as an author of draft Briskin, but he doesn't complete the statement, so don't know exactly what he means.
Yeah, I think that was just a unicast comment to Igor.
Benoit Claes, so since you asked the feedback, Lou, so I read the previous version of the draft. I think it's good. We should not fall into the trap to make it too complex and to take care of every single situation. The second bit of feedback is that we should optimize this for a router, I believe, which means it should not be too complex. It says in the draft it should be for an orchestrator, a controller, a router for everything. I believe that if it works for a router, it could work for controller orchestrator, but maybe it's not the goal, because anyway it's going to be full of proprietary code. So maybe let's not try to cover everything. If we would have a simple Harmon event alarm just for Yang, that would be good already.
Alex Clem. Yeah, so just my comment also this. So I think basically clearly as a framework and so forth, I think this is very much needed. I think to address the complexity, actually, there are some concerns along the same lines, but I think actually for this reason, it's important that we separate clearly the ECA framework from how you would actually define the events, conditions, and action. And some of this basically can be taken from outside. And actually one potential analogy actually that we were also discussing at the side meeting on Monday concerns, for instance, expression MIB that existed in the past, but was also not part. Well, right now, basically, this would be basically within the scope of this, but this is something that should probably be taken out because this adds a lot of complexity there. True.
Yeah.
That's a good setup for the next speaker who's going to talk about an ECA framework.
Yeah.
So I think see where your next draft comes out, the next set of changes that were alluded to by you as well as Shufang. And I'll also talk with my co-chairs. I think we're headed in the right direction. We're almost there.
Okay.
Thanks. Dan? Sorry, having some operator issues here.
Take your time, it's complicated. Well, I can start actually. So I'm a co-author of the ECA framework document, and I just want to kind of echo some of the previous points that Chin made in the presentation. Effectively, we're using ECA for delegating some network control to a device, whether it's a router or some controller with limited capability. In the context of ACTN, it would be maybe the physical network controller that's responsible for a particular technology domain. So why do we need an ECA framework document when we're already talking about ECA frameworks in the solution document? So essentially the data modeling work. Well, what we want to do is try to focus the data modeling discussion and move some of the more abstract, conceptual, and sort of some of the state management, validation, and conflict resolution discussion, which can be applicable to, not just sort of ECA being used for specific technology layers, but also other types of ECA usage into the framework document itself. So we know what ECA is, so I can ignore this slide, I think, now. It also highlighted that there are two current sort of ECA solution documents that Chin's just kind of mentioned his one, and then Igor and Xupeng have also got a document as well. So I think this ECA framework is applicable to both those documents. So why do we need a framework document? Well, we know that in an ideal world, implementers want very clear, concise details about how to implement in order to solve a particular problem. Now, in the SUPER working group, and I speak with some experience from SUPER, we found that when we started talking about network policy and specifically ECA, essentially one of the reasons why SUPER failed was that essentially it was just kind of the search space was too large. We needed to focus the discussion. We started to get embroiled in very sort of abstract discussion points around sort of the imperative, very important, but declarative kept sort of creeping into the equation. So this ECA framework is focused on imperative policy, so declarative aspects completely out of scope. So we define the concepts of events, the control logic, then the actions, state management, notification handling, dealing with conflict if we try to apply multiple policy models to a sort of single element, or in the event of a particular condition being met. And then also we discuss in the document operational considerations, so things like security. It's very important. So I guess I don't really need to, again, talk about what ECA is and how it applies here, but we need to start asking ourselves is how much state is going to be generated when we apply some of our ECA rules, and where is that state actually managed? When is it flushed? Is it replicated? Do we need to think about centralized or distributed or even hybrid state management environments? And again, these are potential topics that might actually be discussed already to a limited degree in the solution documents, but we actually want to try to keep those documents as clean and concise as possible and move sort of general considerations to the ECA framework itself. Now, obviously, this document is not the implementation guide. It's simply how we can build a network which is event-driven using ECA technologies. It doesn't necessarily mandate which ECA data models to use. We will reference the existing ECA data models, but it's not prescriptive that says you must use this for this purpose. So in the interest of time, I won't go through all of these bullets, but these next couple of slides specifically talk about the kind of questions that we're asking ourselves, and the ECA framework, the authors are generally the same authors that we had on some of those solution documents. So these are the kind of things that we want to have further discussion on, so we're asking the working group for support here. So state management, the architecture of state management, whether it's centralized or distributed. Obviously, there are sort of strengths and weaknesses for that. There may be situations where you actually have to have a combination of both. Policy conflict resolution is going to be sort of critical as well. Remember that these aren't necessarily network-wide policy rules. That ideally something that are very sort of specific for specific events, and something that we've applying here as well and learning from Super is that we want to really be very specific about sort of this ECA usage. So this will have a significant impact actually on hopefully the complexity of the problem. And it's not insoluble in this case, but it is something that can be achieved. And then finally, I think security. Obviously, there are multiple mechanisms that you can implement to secure your protocol interfaces, the authentication, the authorization, state management as well. But we want to kind of look at these a little bit further. So there will be recommendations of how you can harden your devices, how you apply your ECA rules, and so on. Good. So finally, do we need this document? Is a legitimate question, I think. Considering that some of the discussion has started already in the data model work itself. We don't have a particular preference, I think, as authors and contributors to this document. If the working group decides that actually this is a useful document to continue to develop as an individual draft, and it's just a way to store general thoughts and ideas and sort of document open issues, and then actually that facilitates the data model, ECA data model development work, then great. That's, I think, a perfectly legitimate reason to keep the document alive. Or we just move these particular issues into the specific documents, the solution documents themselves, and then you essentially just let this die.
All right, great. So in reading it, I personally found it like that it would be helpful for the discussion. Mm-hmm. But I listened to your presentation and it sounded like a huge body of work, and that worried me in terms of like complexity. But you read the document and you don't see it that way. Mm-hmm. So I think your presentation might have, it scared me a little bit. But the document didn't. So I think, given how new it is, and that we're talking about moving forward with the other ECA work, perhaps give the opportunity for the working group actually to read the document and see what's there. Because I think if we do everything that you're talking about, we're going to end up with another 120-page document versus the 18-page document that's there right now. So, something that's like an 18-page document that helps you understand what ECA is about, that sounds great. 120-page work, that would worry me.
Okay,
personally.
Yeah.
Joe Clark, Cisco. So a little what Lou is getting to, as I listened to you, I was thinking, knowing this space a little bit, what would be very useful, and it sounds like you're already doing this, is communicate with the authors and make them aware of the challenges that you already know about. Mm-hmm. When I read the data model draft, there's a lot of complexity, as Benoit said, of how that is all structured and put together. So I think informing the authors, this is what to be aware of as you're constructing the model, as you're showing examples, that would be useful. And then maybe what comes later is a document that is deployment considerations and deployment guide, tangible, concrete things that operators can do to make the most of this and things that they should consider when implementing it. So I guess what I'm saying is maybe we don't need a framework document ahead of time, since it sounds like you're already doing the legwork to make sure that the data model, the implementable thing, is moving forward. But afterwards, maybe there's need for a deployment considerations document to help operators in particular implement the work that the data model puts forth.
Okay, now, there's two great comments there. So just to respond to those, this document was written after the fact, so it is not sort of slowing down or gating any of the the data model work. I think it is a complex situation, considering what we're trying to do is delegate sort of some autonomic capability to the device that might require some state management and policy resolution, conflict management, etc. Rearrange the words to make the sentence there. So it's worth just having that kind of discussion in this document. If it becomes overly complicated, then yeah, I'm sorry, but I guess it's subjective. For now, then, I'll just continue to, or we will continue to update the document, and hopefully it's a useful reference for the data model development work. And it does sound like some of the sections that we currently have in the document would be relevant for implementation or sort of suggestions of best practices when using ECA in a network.
Yeah, I think the right way to interpret my comment is keep it on the simpler side, but no simpler, and than necessary to cover the topic. And then Joe's is expanded to cover usage considerations for those who are going to build build models using ECA.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So, Alex, I think you're up.
You'll do the clicking. Yeah, there it is.
Here you go. Turn the other way. There you go. Thanks.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Alex Clem. I'm going to give an update on the comparison of NMDA data stores document on behalf also of the co-authors, Yingjun, Jeff, and Jandy. So just a few updates from last time. Again, as a recap, this is the draft that defines an RPC that allows it to compare NMDA data stores to report differences between them without needing to upload entire data stores and then compare them offline. And various applications for this application use cases, but typically basically used to troubleshoot conditions due to unexpected failures or time lags of change propagation within network devices. So yeah, so a new revision of the draft has been posted, 03. There have been basically two main changes to this. One thing is basically in response to an issue that was discussed there earlier, we added an optional exclude origin parameter that can be used to indicate in the RPC invocation that origin metadata from the operational data store should not be included in the output. So this is basically if this parameter is omitted, then basically it is by default basically the origin metadata is included. So this allows to control that. That was one thing. The second change was that we added a performance consideration section that was in response to a comment by Tim Carey. So again, as a reminder, this is the Yang data tree. The one change is the one that is highlighted in blue. This is basically the new exclude origin leaf, basically in the input. Nothing else changes. And so in terms of update, we believe that all the open issues that we had previously have been closed. And so hence the question is basically what the next step will be. So question to the working group, basically, is this ready to go to working group last call? Are there any open issues that we should still address? So that's all I have.
Any comments? No. How many people have read this this version of the document? Very few. Any version? A reasonable number. Anyone have any concerns about moving towards working group last call? No one? Whoop.
Yeah, Charles Eckel. Maybe just because of some of the stuff we've been talking about with packages and Uber packages, I just wondered, could this be problematic where you kind of asked to compare two just enormous data stores while it'd be very, very useful, I could also see it being, I don't know, bad for the router or the device that you asked that of. I didn't read the security considerations section clearly enough, but do you have something about that, how to deal with that?
So what was the question? I'm not sure I followed you fully.
I guess I'm worried about a server that's trying to support this and what it might mean to it if I'm asking it to give me the diff of two really, big data sets, kind of the performance, aspects of that, or the security, kind of like
That's
aspects
right.
of that.
Yeah. Okay, so that is a valid concern. We have addressed this, both actually in the security consideration section. There was also, we added a performance consideration section as well, which is related to the security issue that obviously basically, basically to prevent abuse as a denial of service type of attack vector on this. Yeah, so this is addressed in the security consideration. So clearly, depending on how large the diff is, it does consume compute resources, and in the security section, it does talk about potential mitigation techniques, anything from returning basically a RPC response to to throttling the handling of requests and so forth.
All right. Thank you. I'll confirm with my co-chairs and expect the move to last call.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Ran Tao.
Hello everyone, I'm Ran Tao from Huawei. My topic is Young Data Node Self-Explanation Tags. The module tag has already been defined in IETF NETMOD-module tags, and it is a string associated only with the module name at the module level. The module tag is used to help classify and organize modules. The existing Young push telemetry provides a mechanism to select and to subscribe to operational state data objects based on a selection filter. It is discussed in RFC 8641, but there is no document to discuss how such selection filter should be designed and based on what kind of the input and instructions. Actually, in the existing mechanisms, if you want to subscribe your interested data, you may need to pre-configure the selection filter, or you may need to rely on the service logic defined by the applications. To address this issue, we introduced the conception of the self-explanation, which can be interpreted as instructions on the data selection principles. So with the self-explanation information on the data nodes, the NetOpConf clients can automatically select which kind of the data objects are of interest. For example, to extract the feather feature from the management data object, such as a performance metric. We brought the idea from the feature extraction algorithms to classify and to describe the objects, the data nodes. We describe the data nodes what's the object type, so what's the property? Is a property node, or is an object node, or is a metric node? We define OPM Young data nodes, and based on this OPM model, we allowing the NMS to extract the interested data nodes from the OPM model. Here is an example of the data nodes. For example, the NMS, if he is interested in node and C in module 4 and node in module bar, so what should be done? First, they need to tag node in device modules. And for example, here, the module can be the IETF interface module. The node A can be the in discard packet, and the node B can be just like the error packet. So we tag both node A and the node B to be the performance metric. And to the second step is automatically learn the node tag. And for the third step, we subscribe the interested data based on our OPM based on our tag module. Here we argument our module tag and provide a list of the data nodes, including the node tag and node mask tag and group ID. Just like here is our module. The node tag and the node mask tag allowing for the add or removing tags, and the group ID is used to identify the data nodes which share the common characteristics. Here we give a module example. For example, here the object type tag is just to use to describe the object type. For example, the interface is an object. Here just for example the property. The property tag is used to describe a property. It's like the interface name is a property, and the performance metric for just like the received packet, the CPU usage is just a performance metric. We would like to hear any comments in this room, and we also want to ask the chair if there's any problem for these drafts to be documented as RFCs.
Well, Daniel Eriksson, I see one issue here. This proposes a mechanism for character. Can you go back one slide back?
Yeah.
To put additional metadata and additional characteristics on individual nodes or data nodes that can be, if it follows the module, that can be even maybe changing during runtime, as I understand. Now, my draft about notification capabilities does something similar, but with a very different method. I don't think it is good to have two very different methods for characterizing nodes.
This is Qing Wu from Huawei. Actually, I think about to talk about another job that we discussed in NetConf actually, that actually try to extend capability notification to allow advertisers some tag to the NMS. Here actually try to define the telemetry tag model to allow you to tag the data node within different device model. And so using the notification capability is one way to allow device to advise their information. I understand actually this can be used not only in runtime but also at the implementation or design time. So it's a quite generic model, so we need some mechanism to carry this information. Another way is you can leverage it like a get schema to get this kind of telemetry tag and try to pass it and leverage it to select a appropriate data object. So that's two relevant. I'm not sure I clarify clearly.
I didn't understand the third method, but I hopefully will have a presentation about how the capabilities draft can be extended, if the chairs allow.
How many think that this problem is a problem we should be working on? The problem talked about in the presentation. So I would.
So Chris Ops wrote the module tags. I mean, we've been working on that one for a long time, and it would be interesting to see if it actually gets used, right? I mean, there are some ideas for how to use it in the catalog and stuff. You could view this as an extension to the ideas on how people maybe want to use the module tags. I don't know. It might be worth seeing, giving this the module tags a little bit of time to bake, see if people use it, to see if we need to
Well, this would be
extend
one.
this into
This would
a-
be one use.
What's that?
This would be a use.
Well, yeah, it's a use that adds just to, more to module tags, right? It's not actually using module tags, it's augmenting it. So now it's just that module tags plus this can classify at a higher level or a more detailed level. The question is anyone going to use this at the module tags or even deeper down like this?
This is Qing. Actually, for module tag, when we document this idea, we reference the module tag. We think a module tag concept. We try to borrow this module tag concept. We don't want to reinvent wheels. That's why we augment from the module tag model. But another option, you can define a totally new model, but quite similar, because this one actually focuses on data node level, but the module tag focuses on module level. That's a key difference.
Rather than spend too much time on this.
Right. Well, I just want to say, I'm questioning whether people are going to use the stuff I did. Right.
All right. Last two comments, please.
So I'm going to be short, Benoit Claes. So Chris, am I going to use what you did? Well, no. I haven't seen the killer app for tag at the Yang level. However, tags at the data node level, yes, I would need that. Trying to be short and maybe direct, sorry.
In the capabilities or notification capabilities model, we have a few more branches. Like capabilities might be different for the same node in different data stores. And that I think is needed in your use case as well, but I don't think it's available in the module tags. Can I propose that I have my two slides first and then we discuss maybe this further?
You can make a comment, Shin.
This is Qing again. Actually, I think we have two documents in two different working groups. Actually, try to solve this issue, and here we just come up with more tag model, telemetry tag model, maybe more generic. We think maybe that's many way to extend to use a different mechanism to carry this telemetry tag. Actually, one way we consider is capability notification. Maybe there's some other way. So what do you suggest we should decouple from capability notification? We should define another maybe, I'm not sure we call it capability, maybe called telemetry tagging advertisement model. You want to decouple from notification? What's your suggestion?
All right. So we now have about 20 minutes left in the session. So sorry, let me close out the last one. You got very few people responding to this as a problem that they want to work on, but clearly there's interest among those very few people. I would say let's see some more discussion on the list and see if we can get a broader set engaged. The number of people there was a little too small to sort of look for adoption, but it's not too small to work with them to maybe come up with a solution that, if everyone's happy, we'll next time have a much stronger draft. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask that Rob, you come on up. We're going to spend 20 minutes talking about the adoption of the design teamwork. If we end early, we have a couple of slides from Balazs on generic capabilities idea. It's not even a draft. So if we have time, we'll use it. But if we don't, we're going to do this pretty important design teamwork. So the question in front of the design team, in front of the working group, is whether we should be adopting the design team documents. There was a request from Martin to ask a technical question at the start of this, so I'll ask that if I can find it, and then open the floor for others to discuss the documents. Maybe I should flip back and give you the full list, and whether we want to move to adoption. You can do it.
Okay, so Martin's clarifying question is it correct that the version selection doesn't change anything for a client that doesn't use select schema set? Also, after a successful select schema set, will a get on a Yang library be different, reflect the new schema set?
So, just those questions. I think the idea is if you use the schema selection to change the default schema for the server, then a client that would connect that device, any client that doesn't choose something different, would get that default schema, would get whatever schema has been chosen back, and the Yang library that they would see would reflect the schema that they're using. So Yang library would change to whatever you see on that particular session.
So there were two separate questions here.
Okay.
One is, if you don't use the select, what happens?
You get the default one. So if you don't use the select, you get the default.
Yeah, so I think that was question A. And then question B. So this on B is, after a successful set, will a get on a Yang library be different as it reflect the new schema set? So I think if you get the library, do the set, do a get again on the library, what happens?
You'd get the library of the new schema, the schema that you're using, you'd expect to see.
Right. So Martin is saying, is it a global thing for all clients? As in, does the select change global state, or just does it global state for the server, or just for that session?
So it depends. So if you can, in the configuration, you can change the default schema to use.
Sure.
And that affects the global state
But
for everyone.
that wouldn't be a select. That would be a config change.
A config change, yeah. And if you on a particular session you do a select, then it changes it for that particular session. So you get back
it would be non-global.
Non-global. Yeah.
I hope that covers Martin's questions. We'll see whether he comes back. Okay, do we have any other questions, clarifying questions on these documents that were presented? I know it was a little bit of an abrupt change to stop at the end of the session and try to do a context switch, but we do have time to discuss. Well, seeing that we don't have energy for that, let's move on to some questions. How many think that what they have heard and what they have read from the design team is moving in a direction that they think is a good one for the working group? I'd say that's a reasonable number. How many have concerns? Okay, so just a couple. Are you willing to voice your concerns? Are you willing to go to the mic and talk about what concerns you have?
Chris Hops. So, previous job worked for.
Can you just speak up a little? It's hard to hear.
At a previous job, I worked at a large operator, and this stuff just seems so complex, and that if it actually permeates into real models, it's going to make Yang really kind of useless. The whole point of Yang was that it would be really easy to manage a bunch of different devices with common models. If we're just bouncing around with versions and forks and branches and, I'm not saying that you aren't solving a real problem. That's why I've been ducking out of this conversation, because I just don't have time to follow those real problems. I think they tend to be a lot with vendor models and vendor APIs, and I really hope that we don't see a lot of this version stuff and NBCs and all that other stuff with IETF models, right? Because the basic models need to just they don't need to be perfect, but fixing them needs to not involve a bunch of versioning and stuff, I hope.
So I was going to say, I think that some already today with some IETF models, we've had them that have shipped and been broken in RFCs and needed to be fixed. There's other cases where we've needed to extend them things. I agree with you that it should be a minority case. And in terms of some of these non-backwards compatible changes, I don't think it's focused primarily on those IETF models. But I still think there's still a need to be able to evolve things at a slightly quicker pace. I think that's held some of the IETF models back, that they're trying to get a perfect model because they think once I've written this, I can't ever change it. So I think that's acted against IETF, and that maybe if there'd been a bit more flexibility and the ability to say, look, we can fix this up if we don't get it right the first time, then that would help the IETF model to move quicker. I also want to say, like open config models, those ones definitely have been having version changes and churn, and I think non-backwards compatible changes in places, and they've had more adoption in the industry, the operators. So there's certainly some operators that are happy to get these things quicker and have more churn. And the other place that we've seen this is in terms of vendor native models and things, and that's one of the cases where we've had most of this, and I think that's a immaturity issue of those models in cases. And yes, the vendors could and should do better to try and produce more stable models, but it's a balancing act between getting stuff out quickly and getting it out to be perfect. I think we need to have some way that we allow things to be not perfect the first time and to fix them.
Two comments from Jabber. The first is Martin was saying, yes, it's headed at the right direction, but he does have concerns about the complexity, and Andy Bierman says +1 on the concerns for complexity.
Well, Lars Daniel Eriksson, I think that changes and even NBC changes are happening. That's at least for the vendors, that's a fact of life. Many reasons. These drafts try to handle them, document that, and make life easier once you observed that these changes are happening.
Joe Clark, I thought I might have to sit down, but he didn't quite get to where I was going. A lot of what we have done in here is we've done it to satisfy the requirements, not to say that you have to do any of this. And what I mean by that is, to Chris's point, in the IETF, we may not have, forking may not really be a thing that happens. And in general, it was allowing for the possibility, but not mandating that these things have to happen, so that you don't force complexity where it isn't needed. And so that was what we tried to do with some of how we structured some of the solution, to avoid imposing complexity where it may not be required.
Martin wants to make it clear that his comment was complexity in the version selection only, not the rest of the work.
Okay, that's good. I was going to ask that question of him actually. So,
Okay.
and I think,
And by the way, that's how I read Chris's comment as well, and maybe I misread it. He says, no, I didn't misread it.
so in terms of the version selection, I think that's the draft of the ones we've been working on, other than the schema comparison last week. We spent the least time of that on that draft towards the end of this last cycle. So I think that in some ways is one of the least mature drafts, and I think it needs some more refinement in various areas. I still think that can be done once it's adopted as a working group item. And in particular, things like, at the moment, I think for some people, it gives too much flexibility as to what you can choose. I think I would be looking certainly the ability to constrain some of that. So you have to configure the available schemas to use, and then the clients choose out of the ones that have been configured and allowed. So I think that would make the problem space a bit simpler. Does that mean we have to wait a full cycle before we can get there, or that's the question I think is interesting?
I'm glad you brought it, you phrased it that way, because this was the question I was going to ask the design team is, do you want to ask the working group to adopt the current work, or do you want a little time to refine the set, including version selection, or notably version selection?
So,
and I understand you're not the whole design team.
Yeah.
You know, just what's your read? and anyone else on the design team is welcome to chime in.
I think what I would like to get feedback from the working group on those documents. So if there's a chance that this set or a significant amount of work doesn't get adopted at the working group, I'd like to know that now, sooner rather than waiting another 4 months. And then we spent a long time on this work for it to say, actually, it hasn't got adopted. So I'm really wanting feedback from the working group to say, yes, this is definitely in the right direction. Some tweaks are required, but I don't mind whether that is done on people just giving feedback as the set of things that they have issues with, and we work for another cycle and then we try and do an adoption in 4 months, or we try and do an adoption on these drafts. But getting that feedback is critical, I think.
I think I read the room as a pretty clear feedback is that there's general support for the work, but a lot of concerns on this one point of complexity, this one document of complexity. Yeah, anyone is welcome to come and correct my read of the room or their perception. You know, that's why we're having this meeting and we have the time. But that's how I read the room.
And do you think that we have to wait for that? You want to adopt all the drafts the full set?
Well, let's see what people's feeling is. So I'm going to ask as a set, not individual documents. So with the caveat that this is the start of the working group activity, not the end, and that we would be, by adopting these documents, we'd be giving a general direction for the work, and that we can qualify it and say that the version selection is overly complex, it needs to be simplified. So with those caveats, I'm not going to be able to ask a question, okay?
I just want to clarify, didn't the bottom thing just get published a week ago?
Yes.
Okay. So you're taking a draft published a week ago and you're asking if we should adopt it?
I'm asking if, as a set, I'm asking the room who would be in favor. I'm going to ask two questions, so don't raise your hand yet. Two questions. Who would be in favor of adopting the set? Who thinks we should wait to adopt the set? And the waiting would be trying to reduce the complexity of the version selection. So adopt now. That's a reasonable number, and then adopt, not wait until we have a simpler scheme, a simple version selection. Less, but still some people.
So I raised my hand, Joe Clark. I raised my hand both times because I agree
Say
with
that one more time, Joe.
Joe Clark, I raised my hand both times. I don't mind if it's adopted now. I also, if the room feels that we are in the right direction, I don't mind. We work well together. We can execute pretty quickly. I don't mind either way, but I'm glad to hear that there seems to be some support for adopting as a set as well.
Yeah. And you'll note that I did not ask a third question. It was intentional, and Martin's trying to ask for the third question, and I'm not going to ask that, is adopt a partial set. The chairs did talk about this before, about how we wanted to proceed, to recommend to the working group to proceed, and we recommend either to adopt as a set or to wait as a set.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's support to adopt, but that said, if listening to what Joe said is if you think you can turn something around quickly, we can go for another version and then do the adoption. So unless someone would like to object, and this could be anyone in the room, I'd like to suggest that that's the direction we go. I will have to talk to my co-chairs and see whether they agree.
Yep, and I agree with what Joe said. Actually, I'm happy either way. So I think we're on the same lines. I'm happy to try and produce a simpler version of that version selection draft and do the adoption call, then that works.
Great, thank you.
Dejan Bogdanovic. The sooner we adopt, and most of the room is in favor of adopting, we can get sooner to a solution, because we need a solution, and dancing around it before we actually have something proposed out there, nobody will start implementing or working on it until we have something that is at least a working group item. So the sooner we get to that, because I don't see anything that would hold us up, getting it adopted and then having an official version that you can start working on it as a common document, work group item, would help us. And delaying this decision for another few months, I don't see any benefits. Nobody had any concrete proposals against it anyway.
Chris Hobbs, I just can't believe you're going to ask it about a week-old document. I mean, I would be willing to raise my hand too, right? If I had a chance to read it. I mean, it's a week old. So you might, I mean, I don't know how many people raise their hand.
We're not talking about last call. You know, we're talking
but you're asking adoption of a document. How many of the people raised their hands in support of adopting the set who hadn't read that document?
Okay. So, how long do you think you would need to do a next rev?
Of the skim versions
Yes.
selection draft, I don't know, a month, is that realistic? A
Okay.
month, 6 weeks or something?
So what I'll go and talk to my co-chairs about is looking for adoption in January.
Okay.
And that we'll see which version we adopt.
Okay.
Based on the room, if in January the only thing we have is this version, it sounds like we'll be polling on this version.
Okay.
If we have a simpler version, we'll be able to poll on that.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good.
Chris, did you notice what I just said about when the adoption would occur? Because it addresses your point. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you all. We actually have 5 minutes left, and there was a request from Balazs that we cover an issue that he's been seeing on a different. It's actually I think it's a NetConf document. But it's really, of course, related to both. So. So you have 5 minutes. Well, 4 minutes.
Okay. So this relates actually strongly to the previous presentation about self-explaining tags. We have some server capabilities that are mostly related to specific places in the Yang model, so to data nodes, and we want to document them. We want to document them in design time or implementation time, but it also would be good to see them in runtime. We have, at this point, 1.5 or 2 solutions. One is the notification capabilities draft, which cleared work group last call in the NetConf. And we have this tag-based solution, which we were presented earlier. Next slide, please. I think we should it's bad to have multiple ways. I actually have received a private request about a similar issue for another problem that might come forward later. And I think actually my draft about notification capabilities based on this publisher subscription capabilities container is a perfectly good way to present and to specify server capabilities. And it could be extended very easily to contain other parts, other capabilities as well. I see the only big problem is that it is the base container is called publisher subscription capabilities, which many capabilities will not be related to notifications and publishers, or at least not strictly. So the naming is a problem. But it would be good because it would be good to use the same structure, maybe even the common structure to represent server capabilities. And well, I think it's a good solution. It's good that you can put the capabilities on the system level, on the data store level, or on individual nodes or node groups level. On the other hand, having this publisher subscription capabilities name, that's not a good thing. So what I see as way forward is we do nothing, handle it individually one by one for every group of capabilities. We say that you have to follow a similar structure, but effectively you are copy-pasting this, let's say, the structural part of the Yang model one by one, or we extend and slightly change the Yang notification capabilities model to make it more generic. That would mean renaming the root container and forcing everyone to have a container around his capabilities.
I think we're out of time, so we have probably a time for one question.
Could you just put out the next slide?
Sure,
I
while
won't
he's
speak.
asking his question.
Okay. The last one.
So I think that having generic capabilities is a good thing, and hence renaming it, that's good. My one concern here is, I think for the capabilities we need more granularity than supported here. Or actually, put it another way, we need a granularity that's between doing individual data nodes versus all data nodes of the same type. So I think having either subtree selection or an XPath selection would be a good thing to have if this turns into a generic model. So Rob Wilson was on.
All right, thank you. So I think, if you want to pursue this, it would be great to see a draft on it, and we can talk about it in Vancouver. We are now out of